So give it up for our GrowthHacking star, Taylor Ryan.
All right. Audio. Well, I'm super loud, so I am going to jump into this. There's so much to go over, and it's one of those crazy things. I'll try to hit as many different areas as possible, but I think the reality is, yeah, the class is basically 18 hours of all this compacted into 2 days. When Anna and I had first kind of started doing this project, the idea was, is it possible to do this over the span of 6 weeks? So I designed the course for 6 weeks, and we've now compacted it down to just 2 days. So if you're interested in taking the course, by all means, feel free to get in touch with Anna or the folks over at Talent Garden. They'll set you up. All right, so the whole concept of today's presentation is, it's a mixture of things. I had basically a flat-out conniption. I lost my mind with the most recent Google updates that came out. And for a good week, I was trying to cobble together something in the way of an understanding of why that happened. And the conclusion that I started to come to is that the future is paid, meaning you have to shell out money in order to reach people. Just like the old days of, let's just say, newspapers and magazines, if you wanted to reach a bigger audience, you had to pay to get your ad into something. And the idea is that for a very long time, we've all been able to reach people organically without having to pay. You put something out on Facebook, and all of a sudden it's there and tons of people are seeing it. What happens if Facebook and Google and the rest of these major publishers start going into this older model of you have to pay in order to reach people? And that's where we're going. And I'm going to show why that is. I'm going to show a bunch of other crazy things. There's a lot of bizarre shit that's going to come at you. So get ready. I'm happy to answer some questions at the end, but Anna kind of gave me a great introduction. I'm a co-founder of 6 different startups, only one of which was mildly successful, so lots of chances to fail. So don't think I'm a rock star up here or anything. I've had 11, almost 12 years now of experience. I do a fair amount of guest lecturing for Google, CBS, I was there last week, KU, ITU. It's all over the map. I don't know, it's really easy to get to. Everything's 15 minutes by bike in Copenhagen, right? So we've already kind of talked about the masterclass in Talent Garden. That's going to be the 8th and 9th, and I think there's a lot of stuff in there. It's expensive, but it's worth it. And if you're, I know, well, it's not like I'm getting the fucking money, but it's one of those things that I think you can get a lot of value out of it. So the company that I work for, 9 to 5, that's Valuer. Valuer connects startups with corporations. It's one of those things that you have a lot of these really large companies that are struggling to find new business models and revenue in the future. And the idea is that if they don't collaborate with these young startups that are agile, quick, and easy to kind of pivot and do a lot of different things with some amazing technology, ultimately these large companies lose out in the long run. So here are some of my projects. I started a company called Architecture Quotes about 1.5 years ago, and we're basically doing lead gen and lead aggregation deal flow for architecture firms. It's been an exciting thing to try to disrupt a new business model, so if there's anybody sitting in the audience that has some money, I'm looking for funding. Clint Marketing is actually another project that, you know, the more of these things I do, the more people ask me if I can kind of give some of that mojo away and help them out. And at some point it's like, cool, I need to make money doing this. So one of my buddies down here, Rasmus, is helping me with Clint Marketing, and it's basically a growth hacking firm here in Denmark. And then the last little bit is Taylor Ryan IO. So if you get tired of staring at my ugly face, I totally get it, but if you want me to come speak at your event, I'm down. So lots of stuff going on. I work 7 days a week. I know that's more of an American thing. My girlfriend here puts up with a lot of it, but appreciate the support. So yeah, fun fact that she told me not to put into this. I was on an American reality show. And it's not like the kind of Tinder version of dating. It was basically a reality show that's on the Home and Garden channel about moving to Denmark. And so with clever editing, they can do anything. And so they made me look like a total douchebag over the span of about half an hour. So if you look it up on YouTube, it's there. Feel free to check it out and laugh at me. So my goal for today is to provide value. Now, I understand that not everybody here has experience in marketing. Not everybody might be familiar with the different tools that I'm going to throw out there. But the idea is I'm trying to give everybody at least something to come away with. There must be something in each of you that is able to at least have some commonality with the stuff that I'm teaching. Or if nothing else, maybe it's something interesting to throw at a cocktail party. I have no idea. So it's always more important for me to kind of form some of the points that I'm making, knowing what the audience is made of. So this is the interactive portion of the show. I just want to get a feel of how many people here work in marketing. Damn, okay, good. How many people here are entrepreneurs or have started their own company before? Fucking A, good crowd, all right. And how many people here have never done entrepreneurship and don't work in marketing at all? Okay. Good. It's a pretty good mix. I like that. Very cool. So this is kind of the concept that I generally lead off with, and it gives something in the way of an understanding of my processes at its root core. The idea is that growth hacking is essentially just doing the work. The way that you learn how to be really good at anything is just doing it, right? So if I were to hand somebody, a violin in the front row and say, play me an amazing tune, a fiddle, you know, what would end up happening is probably the first time she went to go play, got awful. The 100th time, maybe something that's listenable. 1,000 times, it's like, okay, this person probably is classically trained. The idea is growth hacking can't really be trained. It's just doing the work. So if you were to take your car to a mechanic and one guy has read every book for the last 5 years on fixing cars, and the other guy goes, well, I've fixed everything within cars for the last 5 years. Which one do you want to have work on your car? I want the guy who has dirt underneath his fingernails and is like, I can fix everything because I've done it. And that's what I try to encourage people to do. It's getting involved. The simplest way to kind of think about growth hacking, there's lots of different definitions, but the idea is basically doing more with less, right? So a lot of us here are probably part of bootstrap startups, meaning there's no fucking money, right? And that's really tough to work off of. So the idea is getting the biggest impact with the least amount of money and the least amount of time spent to really show amazing results. That's the concept. So when I teach a lot of marketers, I try to get them to understand this based on systems. The idea is that if you understand one element of a system, you can apply it to other things. If you understand basic algebra, you can start to understand geometry. You understand geometry, you get into trig, you understand trig, and the whole world opens up to you. It's the same thing with content. It's the same thing with marketing in general. If you understand one basic element, the rest falls in its place. You can say, okay, cool, I know content. I can apply that to SEM, or I can apply that to SEO, and I can learn how to, I don't know, start building landing pages based on what I've learned previously. It's all cyclical and all builds on one another. There is no island when it comes to marketing. So this is a bit of the nerdy side, and I promise I'm going to go a little higher level on this, but I'll get back to the real shit. But the recent shakeup was what really threw me off, and I was losing sleep over this stuff, the recent algorithm changes. And I think it's super important for all of us to understand what's coming. And the changes are happening right now. That's the crazy part. And either you're going to get out ahead of it, you know, the early adopters always end up winning this stuff, or you don't. And that's fine. There's plenty of people that will be left behind, but the idea is at least being aware of what's happening is super important. So these are some of the subjects that I'm going to go into. The first one is EAT. EAT stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. Google has a real problem with fake news, and so does Facebook, so does LinkedIn, obviously. But the issue is that they're trying to figure out which sites are actually validated either via recognizable names or they have a really strong about section, but they're trying to figure out essentially how to prop up the sites that are genuine versus the ones that aren't. So a lot of bad players out there are getting screwed, which is good, but there's inadvertent consequences to trying to screw the people that are out for bad things. Now, this is also when Google introduced this YMYL concept, your money, your life, which is like the worst shit I've ever heard of. Like, it sounds ridiculous. It's too fluffy, but it makes sense for Techfestival. No offense, guys. So it's one of those things that they're trying to help people not spend money on stupid shit. So they started immediately going after medic sites. So anybody that's offering medical advice that isn't backed up with real authority, a real university or a real publishing house behind them, they struck these people down super hard. So you had sites that were hitting upwards of 3, 5, even 10 million visitors that saw a 95% drop in traffic, right? That happens, and I'm gonna go into some detail on that stuff. But in essence, it was about kind of batting down this fake news stuff. So this core June update happened, and it shook everybody that touches SEO. And there's a reason for that, because it happened at the same time as another update that I'm going to go into next. But it was huge when it came to the medic community, the technology community, so startups got screwed, finance, so anybody that was trying to promote a new Bitcoin offering, a new coin in general, ICOs, all these sites got screwed. CCN.com used to have 2 to 3 million visitors. Now they're down to like 30,000, right? They got screwed. And these are people's livelihoods, right? Like that was somebody's way of paying the rent. And that's over now. There's no way to get back up. Other news sites that were shot down, the Daily Mail, which is basically like a news rag, like it's not real news. And BuzzFeed saw major drops. So this happened at the same time as the diversity update. Another great topic for Techfestival. So diversity in the sense of the way that Google looks at it is you are not allowed as a domain, so let's say valuer.ai, to rank for the same keyword twice. Now that shouldn't be a big deal. Google defines it as, have you ever done a search and gotten many listings all from the same site and the top results? We've heard your feedback about this and wanted more variety. A new change now launching in Google search is designed to provide more site diversity in our results. That sounds great, right? The idea is that you don't come up multiple times, but the way that they did this was I might come up for number 5 for corporate innovation, but I also come up on number 20. Shocker, I got number 20 at the end of the diversity check, and that's one of my key niche words. There's only so many phrases that you can use to actually like come up for this stuff, right? Templify got screwed, they're right down the road. And who were some of the winners of this early on? It was assholes that sell pirated software. So if you Google Adobe Premiere, which is a great video editing tool, shocker, the first website's going to be Adobe Premiere. The second one is hacked version of Adobe Premiere, get it for free. And all these guys are like, this is great, and I totally get that, but it's the inadvertent consequences. So this is what it looked like for Valuer. And I know the screen's kind of dim with the sun, but if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll get the slides, by the way. So I'm also doing a screen cap, and I'll eventually put out the video of this. But the idea is you can see that nice peak where, dude, everything was going great in May. I'm high-fiving myself in the mirror. It was so good. And then all of a sudden, we have this diversity update and the June core update, and I saw an immediate drop. And I'm not the only one, right? This happened across the internets. So this is another site. This is Drax. They offer medical advice. Now, there's some stuff on there that I thought was bullshit bingo, which is like how to cure cancer with like a vegan diet. And it's like, I don't know, boys. But it's one of those things that they're never going to get back up on top. Now, one of the interesting things is you see this little spike that happens afterwards. That's what they call tremors, right? It's uncertainty. So they make a big change, they hit go, and then they have to go, uh-oh, that didn't work. So then they have to reshuffle the deck again. So after they reshuffle, the guys got screwed again. So, I mean, it sucks, but that's just the world we're living in. So July has also been full of volatility, and a lot of people are going from bad to worse as they continue to tighten this wrench. And it doesn't seem like that's going to change, and there's reasons for that. The future is paid, right? So there's less visibility on organic, and I'm going to show you what that looks like on mobile. And also, I don't know how many people, it's not really a big thing in Denmark because Amazon isn't huge out here, but how many people have a smart home device that you say either Alexa or Amazon? Anybody have one of those? Cool. They're actually pretty good. Like you just get used to it, like Alexa, play Despacito, and then you're in it, It's coming, and a lot of people that don't have it, I feel like as soon as you go over to a friend's house that does, you're like, oh, I want one of those, and it's like, yeah, it's $50. So let me show a quick video. And this is a video of me searching for one of my top key phrases that we used to rank for. It's called corporate innovation. It's the concept of basically corporations trying to change their business models and what they do. So first thing we get here is ads. You're supplied with 4 ads. Now, there's a reason that Google came out and said favicons are super important. That's what this little icon is. I know it's really tough to see. That's the only determination that you have on mobile between whether or not this is an ad or it's junk. So let's keep going. The next set is Google Images. Those are served up. So that's Google's product, right? The next is an answer snippet. And answer snippets are becoming more common. I'm going to go into detail about that. But this is really hard to rank for if you're a low authority site. So if you're just starting out, within the first year, you're going to have a real tough time ranking for any answer snippets. The idea is Google wants 0 clicks. Google wants you to come to their search engine, get the answer, maybe even buy a Google product, but not necessarily go to where you want to be. This is a game changer, and this has been happening for the last 10 years. They're just doubling down on it. Then after that, we get ads. Awesome. So ads are great, but guess who owns YouTube? Google, right? So they're serving up more Google products. And then they go down into people also ask. People also ask puts you in another loop of Google searches. The idea is the longer that you are on Google's products, the more you use it, the more data they can collect, the more targeted ads they can serve. Follow the money, right? That's all it is. They're just trying to keep you using their products and on their sites. So then we go down to top stories, and that's Google News, right? So we're still on Google. And by the way, really difficult to get in there. That requires a lot of authority. So that's Forbes, twice, another publisher. So we keep going. And give it a second. And now we're at the beginning of organic search, right? That, if you're on a phone, I don't care how tall your phone is, that's 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 swipes up to finally start getting into the organic space. That's fucked up, right? And desktop is a little better, but you're going to find that that's going to be the experience on mobile from this point onwards. And I'll show you why. So here are some interesting facts. In the quarter Q1 of 2019, this was Google's just US searches. Google received 150 billion searches. 48.96 were solved without a click. That means nobody had to click on any organic searches. They didn't come to my website. They didn't come to your websites. They got an answer snippet. They go, got it, I'm out, done. They didn't spend any time on any other products, any other sites, and that's super messed up, right? And that's only going to get worse. So the idea is what do we do? How do we get back in front of people? We're talking about a 0-click future, right? And why would Google do this? The answer is right here. Ad revenue trends. Google generated $32.6 billion in advertising revenue in the second quarter, a 22% increase year over year. They're making money, right? And if you're printing money, I can't blame you, because I probably would do the same thing. I don't have $1 billion in the bank. So it's one of those things that we have to figure out ways around it. The problem is everybody else is doing this whole operation, right? So like the high tide raises all boats. Facebook's doing it too, right? Your reach back in 2012 was significantly larger than what it is today. And pages, I mean, it's absurd. The amount of reach for a Facebook page, and I don't have time to go into all these pages, but it's crazy sad when like I look up some of my competitors like CB Insights, and you look at the posts on Facebook and it's 1 like or 0 likes, and you start looking around, it's the same person. It's the person who posted the post is like, all right, yeah, you know? But that's the world that we're living in, you know, and I see that on valuers pages as well. And so the idea is that they're turning down the volume to every voice in this room, and so you have to figure out new ways to get in front of people. So the question is this the end of organic growth? Not a chance. Far from it, right? So there's been algorithm updates in the past, and the idea is it's always going to be this cat and mouse game. It's always going to be the arms race, and we have to find ways around it. So there's countermeasures, countermeasures. There's a million different things to go into. I think the answer is growth hacking or clever marketing. So how to get started, right? You have to get into paid channels because that's what gets you in front of people at this point. You have to pay to get into the newspaper, basically. So I'm going to show a bunch of marketing funnels. We've all seen this stuff before. Here's one. Attract, convert, close, and delight. Delight is my favorite. I think delight is super undervalued. The idea is, how many people here have been in a phone contract with the same company for at least 8 years? Yeah? Cool. How often do you guys see the same adverts for 3 where it's like, hey, this is half the price of what you're currently paying. All new customers, come on in. It's like, What the fuck are you doing for your boy who's been a loyal customer for 8 years? Nothing. That's crazy, right? And there's disruption there. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for people to be incentivized to love and be a cheerleader of the brands that they enjoy, or the brands that are at least giving them a chance to say, hey, thanks for allowing me to be your customer. Here's another version. This is probably the most familiar and simplistic one. Awareness, interest, decision, action. Here's another, the paid marketing funnel of basically awareness, consideration, decision, retention. And one more, which is kind of interesting. I like the relationship and advocacy at the bottom. That's kind of this referral generation. And this is what a lot of B2C companies really need to double down on. This is that delight stage, just rephrased. So real quick, I want to go through these. I'm just going to touch on them. But the idea of providing awareness is essentially building content or building ways for people to discover you. It's all about asking your customers, what don't you know about your industry? What don't you know about your product? Where do people that buy your shit go when they're not buying your shit? Who are your ideal customers, right? Who are the people that are looking at your stuff and what else do they enjoy? Those are really basic things. When I try to explain content to the 3 previous companies that I've been fired from out here, it's one of those things you have to hit a periphery, right? It's not a one-to-one type of thing. If your blog is all about how outstanding your product is, fuck you, I'm never going to read it. It doesn't need to be a sales pitch. Provide me value. Give me a reason to check this out. So consideration is kind of fun. This is where if you ever shopped for, let's say, shoes online and the shoes keep following you everywhere you go, right? This is remarketing. That's display remarketing, but it still works the same way. Facebook's tracking pixel is phenomenal with this, and the idea is you can create custom audiences that you regularly target and then start to parse out. It's amazing, and it's one of those things you could do right now. One of the things in terms of the consideration phase is building out campaigns that you can test against each other. The idea is what resonates with me might not be the same thing that resonates with the same person in my demographic. And you're allowed to try different messaging. You're allowed to fuck up. You're allowed to spend money that never comes back to you. I'm gonna go over a couple of examples of that, but it's a real thing. The idea is uncovering multiple buyers by testing. We all have assumptions, right? And there's a great Samuel L. Jackson quote from, what is it, Pulp Fiction, right? You know, when, what is it about assumptions? If you make an ass out of you and an ass out of umption. I don't know, it's great. So in terms of the last little bit, the action or convert, we're basically trying to give somebody a reason to get them to put in their details so I can then reach out and say, buy this. Or maybe I don't have to reach out and they're ready to buy on the spot, right? So lead ads are fantastic. It's probably one of the most undervalued things on Facebook. LinkedIn has lead ads as well. So it's like, hey, you want to get this guide? Put in your details. 23 is a local player. 23 allows you to convert inside of the video, meaning you put in your details to find out what happens in the next part of the video. There's Hello Bar, Convertful, those are pop-up things that we all hate, right? There's Push Crew, which is now bought by WVO as of like yesterday, so I didn't have time to change that. Unbounce is one of the most wildly overpriced things that basically they were the first player that as soon as your cursor goes to the upper right, the pop-up window starts because it basically shows intent. And then there's a bunch of different lead capturing tools out there, whether it's Lead Pages, ConvertFox, there's thousands of them. And the last little bit, I don't really have a ton of time to go over this, but referrals is what basically skyrocketed all of the modern, most recent unicorns. Uber, right? Airbnb. If you get $10 for giving your friend a $10 voucher, I end up getting lifetime customers out of it. Does anybody have an idea of what the value of a lifetime customer of Starbucks is? In the United States, it is $27,000. That is fucking absurd. It's just real though, right? That's the lifetime value. And we're talking about a person that goes there, you know, on their way to work during the morning every single day for 20 years, but still, you know, like that's crazy. So there's a reason for really trying to push on these network effects of referral traffic and referral marketing. It's neither here nor there. I don't have time to really go into influencer marketing. I still don't get it. I don't understand how people can have almost no engagement, but a bunch of followers that are obviously fake and paid, or bots, and then somebody's like, yeah, here's $1,000 or more. It's absurd, but it's a thing. This year's super interesting, right? And this is something that I found out like a few days ago, and it was one of those like, really moments? So 2019 will be the first year that digital advertising is overshadowed, traditional advertising is overshadowed by digital, meaning more money is now spent on digital. And it's like, yeah, but I thought that was the case for like the last 10 years. No, it's not. I'm doing a speech over at Tech Barbecue on the second day to explain why most CMOs are full of shit, myself included. But it's one of those things that why on earth would you spend so much money on newspapers and print and banners and shit when most people aren't looking up from their phones to begin with? So there's a lot of crazy stuff happening with that, and there's a lot of really cool things that I'll go into over at Tech Barbecue. I'm not going to go into the multi-device thing. So competitor insights, I think, are really fascinating. So I follow all of my competitors on social media because I want to see what they're doing. And I want to see if they know something I don't. I want to see if there's a certain type of technology that looks like it's working. I want to see how the hell they ended up getting more traffic than me. I want to see why they're ranking for the keywords I want. So there's so much to gain out of competitor insights, especially when it comes to ads. So Big Spy is one of my favorites. And the idea is that you can see every single ad that one of your competitors has put out on Facebook, Twitter, AdMob is like an ad network, Pinterest, Instagram, Yahoo, but I mean, who's using Yahoo, right? And it's great, right? Ahrefs is also a great tool, and I'm going to show a few different things within Ahrefs. Ahrefs allows you to see which particular keyword is generally used. It doesn't tell you if it's broad search or specific match, but the idea is then you can see the actual campaigns that they're writing out. So it's like, okay, cool, that's their top campaign. I like their ad text. I'm going to bid an extra kroner on it and basically copy the ad text, put my ad in it, and I'm good. So it's a great way to basically steal somebody else's ads because those aren't copyrighted. Another couple of tools, BuiltWith is fantastic. BuiltWith is this great tool that allows you to see what types of tracking pixels, what types of tools are integrated on somebody's website. Depends on the type of business model you're in. There's a ton of really fun shit that comes out of Phantom Buster when doing that, but I don't have time to go into it today. So there's a new approach to content, and I showed this to my team yesterday, and a lot of people were freaking out because it means kind of the end of some of our jobs. So I want to show what that looks like, but there's stepping stones to get there, right? Like it never is a direct line. It's kind of a staircase. It's incremental. So one of my favorite influencers I hate the word guru. I don't know, guy that knows a lot of stuff. It's this guy, Brian Dean from Backlinko. He's the guy that coined the phrase, the skyscraper technique. I'll go into it. But he put out this thing on SEO 2.0. And I know it's really dark and you can't see this, but the concept is we have to start thinking about search based on intent, right? What is the purpose of somebody searching for something? And he breaks it down into 4 pretty smart categories. And those are right here. So informational, so like what time is it in Tokyo? That's what answer snippets are for. I don't need to go to somebody's website to figure that out. Navigational, so if it's like a contact information or a contact page or an about page or LinkedIn login, it's trying to navigate through different websites. Commercial is interesting, and this is where a lot of us play. So the thing you put down here is Star Wars posters or CrossFit Soho. The idea is like, I'm researching in an interest of potentially buying. And then the last one is transactional, right? So it's like car insurance pricing or t-shirt store near me or New York to LA flights. The idea is that these searches need to be broken down. You have to ask yourself, what is somebody searching for in order to find this page? What is the thing they're going to type in? Or what is the search or the meaning behind what they're looking for to get to this blog post? Here's where it starts to get really fun, right? So the skyscraper technique came from this crazy mindset of this guy from Backlinko. The concept is basically in the old days in New York City, due to the confines of engineering at the time, every skyscraper basically was reaching about the 80th floor. And the idea was everybody kind of had the same building height. So some asshole's like, I want the tallest building in New York because it's prestige and you're in the center of the universe at that point. So he put up a giant flagpole and he's like, now I have the tallest building in all of New York City. And it wasn't long before somebody else put up another and another and another. It's this game of leapfrog. Think of content the same way. I want to find what my competitors are best at and make a better version. So let's say a competitor of mine makes an article about, I don't know, 20 most delicious water bottles in Denmark. It's a terrible example. But the idea is I want to make an article of that degree, which would be 50 of the most delicious waters that you can't miss in Copenhagen and the rest of the world. Really long title, I'll have to work on that. But the idea is essentially what you're doing is providing more detail, going into deeper examples, and making a really long blog post. So the skyscraper technique 2.0 started taking in some of the ideas of SEO and chalking it in here, right? So making sure to stuff keywords into H1s and H2s, which are basically like headings, titles, right? Then add in a table of contents. The whole reason that we do table of contents these days is to fit into answer snippets. So every question that you think somebody might Google, you need to make a table of contents either in a blog post or an FAQ section, which will allow you to rank for those answer snippets so you come up first. That's the way that you beat the system, is you need to get into those answer snippets, and that's how it's done. Provide examples. Literally use the phrase example of, these examples, example. All these things work, and the idea is Google is making those more valid by making articles that list those more valid. So the idea is it works. Internal and external linking is basically, whenever I write a really long post, I make sure to point people to things that are also validated, whether it's a Forbes article or Harvard Business Review or some other firm that actually has a little bit of oomph behind them. And internal linking as well, basically linking to other stuff on my own site. Really basic stuff, but it works. I get into so many fucking arguments with journalists because they're like, nobody reads long articles. It's like, really? Then how come the article that's 10,000 words on Valuer.ai ranks the highest beyond any page or all of my subpages put together? And they're like, well, I don't really do SEO. And it's like, right, get the fuck out of my ear. Like, the thing is, like, the statistics are out there, right? In order to capture more keywords, you have to cover a topic in more detail. This whole concept of LSI is latent semantic indexing. It means using synonyms. You can't just do the old 90s way or early 2000s way of copying and pasting the same keyword 1,000 times. I'll show examples of people that are getting away with it, but it doesn't really work the same way anymore. The idea is the longer content ranks for #1, you have to do it. And better titles. So I was doing a presentation over at Google, and I was trying to get the audience to engage, and I'm like, can somebody give me something they sell? And somebody goes, t-shirts, and I'm like, all right, t-shirts. So I plugged it into a title generator, and I don't have enough time to really pull up a bunch of those, but the idea is some of these came up. 5 things nobody told you about t-shirts. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck don't I know about t-shirts? I gotta click on that, and it's not even an article yet. T-shirts will make you tons of cash. Here's how. 7 reasons why you're a rookie in t-shirts. How dare you? I wear t-shirts every day. I'm no rookie. So the idea is, I wouldn't have thought of that on my own, right? And neither would he. But if you throw it into a title generator, it's there, and it's free. So why not give it a shot? And the last little bit is content is everything, right? So we put out a ton of articles over at Valuer, and the concept is people are like, you really put Elon Musk smoking a blunt inside of an article about corporate innovation. I'm like, fuck yeah, I did. And it kept people interested, right? People are people. I don't care how fancy they are. What is the old quote? Even kings and queens take a shit, The idea is everybody still has a sense of humor. And if I'm trying to take really dry content, I have to make it interesting. So it's memes, it's GIFs, it's video, it's long form infographics, it's everything. And the problem is a lot of people are thinking of this old school way of doing it where it's mile-long paragraphs. Fuck that. Keep it short, right? Break all these things up, thoughts, in different line breaks. And the last thing is finishing strong, and this is so hard for all of us, right? I do this too. The idea is if you're already 20, 30, 40 hours into one project and it's supposed to be a 10-hour project, dude, you at the very last hour are just like, fuck this noise. I am so over this. The problem is that last 10% is the difference between meh and something that's like, wow, this is actually pretty good. But we all make that mistake, whether it's web development, whether it's SEO, whether it's writing a great piece of content. The biggest enemy of great is good enough. All right, so I want to show 4 quick examples of something that everybody here can do pretty quickly in order to gain traction because it's happening right now. And I'm alluding to something that's to come, and I think it's really interesting. So these are 4 examples of winning companies, 2 of which are in Denmark. So people are starting to invest time into resources section. The idea is they're capturing answer snippets and they're giving people shorter answers, and they're also really focused on basically keyword stuffing. Again, the concept of just putting the same keyword over and over and over. That is not supposed to be the way to do it in terms of SEO for at least the last 15, 20 years. But it's working again, which is crazy. So I'm going to pull up a couple of quick examples. Talent Lift. Talent Lift, and this is basically a screenshot of Ahrefs, but I'm going to Alt-tab it back and forth. And I realize this slows down things a little bit, but bear with me. So the idea is this bottom section here is organic keywords, and the brighter it gets, the higher they rank in terms of the #1 spot. The idea is they basically built these resources from resources, templates, and then job descriptions. And let me show what that looks like. I realize the screen sucks, guys. I'm really sorry. I can't control the sun yet. Kidding, sort of. All right. So this is Talent Lift. They're basically like a job building kind of website. The idea is like it's an extension that either goes on top of your website to allow for a job space or job post, that kind of thing. So here's the interesting stuff. Templates and then job descriptions. The URL structure is perfect. I know you can't really see it, but it's basically their domain / resources / job description template. So if I'm searching for job description templates, I'm already probably doing pretty well if I'm this site. Now here's where it gets super fucked up. Let me just look for billing specialist. So each of these live on their own pages. I don't know if you guys, there we go. And the URL of this is billing specialist job description. And see if you can spot why it works. Inside of the first section here, billing specialist job description template, billing specialist job description, billing specialist duties and responsibilities, billing specialist job profile, billing specialist have a role, billing specialist job description, billing specialist duties and responsibilities, billing special, everything. And it's one of those things like, holy fuck, that's working? And it's like, yeah, it is. And these guys are skyrocketing. Back in the day, this didn't work. And the thing is, Google's trying to figure out why or how to give people more opportunities to see stuff in smaller answer snippets, and that's actually working using this technique. Let me show you another, because I know that wasn't super clear. Novo Resume, they're a local company. 2 things on these guys. They had a piece of viral content that went absolutely insane. It was Elon Musk's resume, if he had a resume. The dude doesn't need a resume, right? So they basically built out a resume, PayPal, and all the other things that he's working on, and it went viral. So it hit time.com, which then put it over to Business Insider, which then hit it over to TechCrunch. All of a sudden, and by the way, if you get in TechCrunch, like, I mean, it's being touched by God. Basically, like, you're set for a while. And it's crazy, but it's one of the validators in Valuer.ai. If a company is mentioned in TechCrunch, they have a 50% greater chance of getting bought out. That's absurd, right? So the idea is that these guys created that went viral, it worked. They had enough clout from that, building up authority, to essentially start building out these templates. And the idea is, I know you can't see it because it's really dark here, but basically, there's no point in showing you, you're not gonna see it. Basically what they did was they changed, instead of their domain /blog, they named it their domain /career articles. The idea is no longer using blog or articles as a subcategory. I know this is super nerdy and some people are like, the fuck is he talking about? Bear with me, I'll skip 24 slides. Propeller is a fun one. So I do a lot of amplification, which basically means anytime that I post an article, I promote it, and promoting it means I send that same article out to 100 other people that wrote a similar article. And if anybody's mentioned my article, I also send an email saying, hey, we mentioned you in this article. And I also send them that same version kind of ish of that email in a sequence 3 times and tell people like, why the fuck do you keep emailing me? I don't want to read your stuff, and it's great. But I had this one girl that's like, just a little bit of feedback, and you can hear the American accent in this. Your email signature is really intense, and it's so distracting. It takes away from me reaching, sorry, I spit on the screen. Me reading the actual email, and also, who starts a sentence with and also? And also, well, I appreciate the pitch. You didn't actually say what you want me to do with that article. Just read it, question mark. It's like, I can tell you what to do with that article. It's one of those funny things. I looked into the company. It's brilliant. There's only 2 full-time employees. Everything else is subbed out. They got a decent little A round of investing, and they're using subcontractors to do everything. Really, really brilliant. And granted, they're not perfect, but they do have one really good thing that's working out. They have thought leadership. So they have some guy at the very top, one of the 2 founders, who's just churning out articles to a lot of these major publishers and getting published. And success begets success, and it's a runaway train. And reading these articles, I'm like, I can't tell if these are handwritten or not, or if they're written by them, but I don't care because he's gotten the backlink. So there's that. So why are blog posts ranking less? That's kind of what I was trying to allude to throughout this. Because they are, right? And we're putting out a lot of really valuable content over at Valuer, and I can't understand why I'm not having this exponential growth that I thought I'd see. And there's a reason. So in 2016 in May, and this is just on WordPress, there's lots of other CMSs or content management systems, basically blogs, right? There were 59 million blogs published just in May of 59 million in May of 2016. So in May of 2018, there were 87 million blogs published. I don't know how many were in my sector. I don't know how many were about something that actually mattered. I don't know. There's no way to actually find out. But the idea is the space is getting crowded. And granted, there are more searches happening, but the people that might be buying from me are still being shoved into this really small space because they have to rank for only a handful of keywords at some point. So it's getting a little scary. And Google has done its best to try to mitigate a lot of fake shit that's out there. Is anybody familiar with the term PBN? Yeah, cool. So like a PBN is a publisher blog network. They're fake articles on a fake website. The idea is that you run a piece of existing content through a spinner. A spinner is essentially something that changes the words so it becomes original, and it doesn't read like it's in English or any language. It's just random words that are all kind of put together in article form, and then they publish. So there's tier 2 and tier 1. Tier 2 is basically like I have a website over here that points to this website, provides value for this, that eventually points to the site that I want to make money on. The problem is articles are easy to spin, and there were thousands of millions of articles that were being spun up and tossed out, and Google had no way to mitigate it until they started figuring out, hey, we got to update Penguin and get rid of duplicate content and get smarter at looking at, is your grammar fucked up? Cool, you don't rank for anything. And that's what's happening. And the concept is marketers ruin everything, right? We do. It's a big theme of Gary Vaynerchuk. Because we exploited this arms race, we kind of screwed everybody that meant to do the right thing. So here's where it starts to get crazy, and this is the stuff that I was working around. AI is coming to content writing, right? So Elon Musk came out, it was back in February, and he basically said that he would be holding back on releasing OpenAI, which is based off of 340 million different sources. It basically was too dangerous to release, and I'm going to explain why. But people have already basically said, hey, we've been able to pick up the source code. It's on GitHub. You can build your own. So it's happening. And the idea is that, using a couple of very simple tools, you're going to find that AI helps everybody very quickly, but also hurts everybody at the same time. So this is a case. This is Persado. Persado is a small company out of San Francisco, and they've expanded. They're original partners with Chase. The idea is that they can take all of the copy on any website and optimize it automatically using AI because they have millions of cases in their system. So the idea is that you're looking at something to the effect of what they claim is an average click-through rate of 68%. Nobody has a click-through rate of 68%. We're talking 10 at best, right? They're saying that they get conversion rates of 76% in terms of an increase. So this means every ad, every page is specifically tailored to me, right? My background, my information, whatever's pulled through on the tracking pixel to me. And if we do this millions of times every day, the machine gets smarter. And they're already doing it. And by the way, there's 44 other Fortune 500 companies that are already clients of these guys, right? And there's 250 other clients that aren't in the Fortune 500. And there's a bunch of other little tools out here that do this for Facebook. There's no reason to A/B test when you can essentially A/B test 1,000 million billion times using machine learning. I don't need users anymore. I don't need people. I need machine learning. Here's where it gets really fucked up. So automated journalism is already here, right? The Washington Post already admitted that they spun out 850 articles just last year, completely written by AI. Nobody touched them. No human ever put their hands on them. It went live automatically. I don't know if you recognize any of these publishers, but it's not like they're little mom and pop shops. These are real companies. The BBC, I don't know, maybe you've been living under a rock. I don't know. Sports is easy though. I've always thought like sports is perfect for like, you know, somebody scored, somebody won, somebody lost. But it should be pretty straightforward. So think about submarines, right? The idea is that in World War I, the Germans were taking over the Navy game because they were the only ones using submarines. And there's only one way to really say this bullet point with a British accent, you have to. But the Brits basically deemed submarine warfare to be uncivilized, ungentlemanly, and a form of Navy guerrilla warfare. You know, and the idea was that submarines were considered cheating, right? Fuck you guys, it was pretty good. Bea. But now every Navy has submarines, right? You have to compete. And the idea is that every company will have to use AI because everybody else is. So that being said, I want to shift gears. Let's bake a cake, right? I want to show you guys how I do a little bit of cooking in the kitchen. Oh, this is going to be really difficult to hear. Can everybody still hear me okay? All right, cool. So this isn't an ordinary cake. Cakes have ingredients, and my ingredients are basically going to be a keyword producer. So it's called Keywords Everywhere, and that allows me to find keywords that rank really well. Then I'm going to do a title generator, just what we saw earlier, greatest things about t-shirts. Then I'm going to use an AI writer, and then I'm going to use a article spinner that will change the content of the AI writer to full Google, and then I'll use Copyscape to make sure that the article actually works. So in essence, making a cake, right? So just like every cooking show, you know, you have like the finished version off to the side. If you want to see what the article looks, man, that's loud. Couldn't we get like a tin roof so it could be even louder? So hold on, let me pull up the AI writer. So this is AI-writer. And I'm going to write an article. So let's say it's for Techfestival, tech events of the future with startups. And I'm done writing. So the idea is that it'll basically go in the oven, and it'll take 1 minute and 39 seconds to write my article. So while we're doing that, you know, like the host basically goes over and talks like, you know, over here off to the side, but I don't know, we've all seen cooking shows. So let me go back to the presentation. So one of the key mistakes that people are going to make with this is making sure that it's validated, meaning it has to pass Copyscape. The whole idea of having duplicate content will screw you in the end if you get a manual or automatic penalty from Google because you're stealing other people's content. This hack doesn't work. So the idea is you plug in your entire article, and for 12 cents, I can find out exactly what passages have been duplicated from another website. So the idea is great. So if I use a content spinner and switch up everything, then I'm not copying anybody. And now it's all original thoughts. And therefore, I can create as many articles as I want. Now, if I'm generating AI articles, it's 1,000 words a piece. Does anybody have an estimate of how much that will cost? I mean, it's AI, right? It should be expensive. Ballpark, anybody? How much? I wish. Yeah, give it 10 years. It's $1. So, yeah, close. So it's $1 to basically write content. And by the way, AI spinners, in terms of being able to actually spin up everything, it's about 50 cents. So my cake should be ready by now. Let's pull it out of the oven. Hold on. Still working on it. All right, well, I'll show you what spun content looks like. I know you can't really see this either. And I can tell that there's some faces that are a little confused by what content spinning is. The idea is that it basically is just taking synonyms and swapping them out. If anybody's ever cheated on a paper in college, we all have. All right, maybe not everybody. I know I have. But the idea is basically instead of using the word sector, they replace it with industry. Instead of changing, it's shifting. Instead of using the word expect, it's anticipate. If we do that enough times across the article, there is no way that Google knows that I'm spinning this. It's not possible. There's too many variables to measure. Therefore, all of the AI articles that I put out seem like they're original. It is a foolproof game. So, now it's ready. And let me pull it up. And of course, I'm not going to read the whole article, but yeah, I'll read like the first 2 sentences. I know it's loud in here. People use a lot of buzzwords to predict the future, with describe the potential paths the world of finance may take as it evolves. Much of it seems to be just talk, but there's also real patterns emerging that point to the increasing efficient and democratic future of financial sector globally. So that's interesting. That one isn't really as nice as some of the others that I've done. So I don't know, I wasted $1. But I can certainly show you some of the others that are in here. And the idea is I did corporate innovation labs and startups. I flipped that over to my content writer, like, who wrote this? And I'm like, AI wrote this, right? And then, you know, for architecture quote, I wrote an article for architecture leads. Those were the key phrases I put in there. Flawless article, again, ran it through the spinner. It's not live yet because I want to check a couple of things, but it's there. So the concept is great, like all of this works, this is really cool. Now I can essentially write as many articles as I can afford to write for $1 and essentially flood the internet. So maybe Google isn't the only platform that I want to fool, so what's a cake without frosting? So I want to make a video, right? I want to make a video of this that people will engage with. So there's a tool called LumenFive, and LumenFive basically generates an entire video BuzzFeed style with titles over top of it automatically. And you can put music behind it. If you take the same text that's going into the video, you can put an automatic voice to text over it. Let me just show you what that looks like real quick. And we've all seen these kind of styled videos, so this basically automatically generated based off the text that I put in there. The text was sourced based on the database of the different stock footage and stock pictures and images. So basically now I have a BuzzFeed style video. If I wanted to put some jazz behind it, I could. You know, and there's a lot of interesting things that can come from that. Google is already looking out for this, so is Facebook, and you bet your bottom dollar that YouTube is as well. And I want to show what the future of this looks like. So, has anybody ever heard of Deepfake? Yeah? Okay. So Deepfake is kind of the next level of this. Imagine Vladimir Putin talking about your subject in terms of maybe it's fintech, and it's Vladimir Putin sitting there and discussing the whole thing. Or maybe you want to call your friend a pussy because he didn't come out drinking last night. And you have the Mona Lisa explaining why your friend is a pussy. Because that's what Deepfake is all about. You can essentially create content out of nothing. And that's coming. It's already here, right? So imagine generating articles artificially, only using a few phrases, videos to match them, and essentially you could probably do podcasts on top of that to match that. The whole content game is over after this, right? Imagine everybody does this all the time. Nothing makes sense anymore. This is a game ender for a lot of people. And this is what I was looking at my team, and they're like, whoa, what do we do? You know, and it's not happening right now. But I want people to be aware of it because this is the future. So one of the things that I wanted to show in terms of what's happening to kind of counteract that, I'm going to have to bounce around a little bit. Bear with me. Yeah, there it is. So this is a great little video from an influencer slash YouTuber called Smarter Every Day. And he did a 3-part series on this, and it's all about countermeasures. I think it's brilliant. Let's see if the audio works. Basically, perfect. So the lead-in on this, man, the lead-in on this is essentially he started finding articles on his YouTube feed that seemed a little off, and they were all automatically generated articles using a tool like I just showed, LumenFive. And he's like, well, how come these articles are actually ranking? And the idea was there was a web of these things pointing to each other. So the idea was it's already happening on YouTube, and some for very nefarious purposes.
Ginsburg. He breaks silence on plan for Supreme Court.
After Trump sends note to Ginsburg, he breaks silence on plan for Supreme Court.
The content was essentially the same, it was just arranged in a different way. Different photos, different B-roll, different title screens. I'm a YouTuber and I spend some time thinking about content ID systems and things like that. And it's clear to me that these manipulations of the video and even the audio are attempts to get around YouTube's automated recognition system. So let me explain how this works. YouTube engineers look at the individual pixels on a video, and then they use the values of these pixels to perform some type of mathematical function, which gives you a number called a hash. You then compare hashes to other videos that have been uploaded and try to figure out if the same content has been uploaded by someone else in the past. The challenging task here is to make a system that's fast enough to find exact copies of specific frames of video across the entire YouTube library, while at the same time making it smart enough to not be tricked. How would you do that with math? Instead of sampling every pixel, what if they sampled specific spots on every video and measured the color values at those specific locations? They could then compare those spots with every other video uploaded to YouTube. But think about what happens if a sneaky person resizes those images. The colors would change at those locations. The same thing would happen if you rotate the image, or flip it, or even apply a filter of some kind. Now, I don't know how YouTube samples these pixels or the audio from the video, or what mathematical functions they use, but I know that's like a company secret, because that's how they defend the platform. If the bad guys were to figure out how these detection algorithms work, then they can get around them and they can beat the defenses. If you look at these crazy videos like a software engineer, you can start to see some really interesting details. For example, why would there be a globe spinning in this image? Well, if you think about it, that's going to change the hash. What if the YouTube engineers figured the globe trick out and then they shut that technique down? Well, in this video, the globe is mirrored. That's going to change the hash in a different way. This specific instance is a countermeasure, which is fascinating. This one is probably my favorite. Why on earth did they put virtual snow falling over the top of a video of the royal family? If you think about it, this changes the math in a kind of random way, and therefore YouTube's ability to detect it. This is like a new form of camouflage that's using math instead of colors on this new bot battlefield where daily fights take place by opposing forces of software engineers. So instead of fighting over hills or pieces of land, the winner of these individual skirmishes gets a few moments of your time, which in today's attention economy is super valuable. Because of the original
So that is essentially the space that we're playing in when it comes to video. I have no idea how that's feasible when it comes to written text. And the concept is, if I can essentially write an article in 5 minutes that's 1,000 words that is super tailored to an industry, it's game over. So not all doom and gloom, but I just want people to be aware it's out there, it's happening now. Cool, so I'll move on. So again, I want to provide enough from enough different areas, so I'm kind of shifting gears here. I did a webinar for basically an accelerator. It's called Hype Innovation, and they do sports tech, which is kind of neat. And people really started clinging on to some of the inbound meets outbound, and also like outbound hacks. So to get started, to kind of go over this stuff, I use this image because it's a bike race, and this girl has an aerodynamic helmet. She's probably 8 years old, and racing attire, and probably a racing bike, with the little kid over here that basically is, you know, the standard, what I had when growing up. Not a girl's bike though, I had a boy's bike. But it's one of those things, I can't afford to use the big tools, right? I can't afford $24,000 a year for HubSpot, and that's on the low end. Certainly can't afford Marketo and Eloqua. But all of them do these things. The idea is that some of these smaller players, smaller tools, give you a little bit more flexibility and you're able to cobble them together. And also some of them have freemium models. So the idea is you're paying far less as a startup, as a small company, and able to do, you know, enabling yourself to do all the same things. So local player, they are Nordic lead feeder. So lead feeder is super interesting, and I love the concept. So the idea is basically on analytics, everybody's APIs are locked in, right? So unless you're using a VPN or, you know, in some cases there are ad blockers that block all JavaScript, but half the time the websites don't work. So the idea is that Google captures your IP whenever you visit a website. So that means if I know somebody's IP, I can use a couple of different tools to say, based on the IP, what is the closest actual address to this? That means I can find out your home address, or I can find out a business address based on you just visiting my website. Has anybody ever heard of swatting? Does anybody know what swatting is? It's like in gaming. So like the idea is that if you find out somebody that's playing against you in a game, you find out their IP address, you call the police in their local jurisdiction and say, there's a hostage situation in that house, you gotta go in there. This guy, he's a dick, and like he killed me in a video game, but it's not a big deal. So, you know, cops raid the house and it's some dude on a laptop, like the fuck's going on? The idea is that you're able to get addresses based on the IP. So if I know a company address, then that means I can enrich the data enough to be able to get a phone number and an email address. That's why I don't visit Albatross's website anymore, because 2 seconds after I visit, I get a fucking phone call from some dude. It's like, so I saw that you were hanging out on our website, you know, it's like, dick, you know? So it's one of those things. It's already happening and it's real, and you can do that yourself. So there's a ton of really interesting hacks that you can get into, either using Zapier if you're not super technical, or using an open API if you want to play around a little bit. But the idea is that you can automatically generate emails that are used to basically hit people at the spark moment. If you are looking at my pricing page, you're not wondering, I wonder what Taylor likes to do for fun. You want to know how much this product costs. That is as good of a moment as ever to hit somebody with an email saying, hey, I saw you were checking this out. Let's get you in. And it works, right? Like I get hit with these things and I'm like, oh yeah, you got a discount? It's like, of course I do. Yeah, I'm a sales guy. You know, and it's a real thing. So there's a couple of different tools, Mailshake, Gmass, Woodpecker. All of these integrate really easily with Zapier. A lot of the capturing tools like Albatross have it internally built out. So it's just something to be aware of. For those that are immediately like have your knee-jerk reaction for GDPR compliance, it's not fucking real, right? So the idea is that this is GDPR compliant. The way that works is for GDPR compliance, you have to email a business email. It can't be a personal email being hit up to sell services. So Valuer.ai to whatever the name of your company is, right? You must allude to where you acquired it. And the terminology is really vague. So when you allude, say, well, you know, we have this internal tracking software that we generally use to track our clients, but it's really weird. Your name came up. Were you on our website for any reason? It's really bizarre. We should talk about this. You got time? It's total bullshit artistry, but check. You know, like you're compliant. You must have a business case, which, you know, you're not selling Viagra products, most of you, right? You're selling a solution. You're selling a business product. So there's no problem with reaching out to these people. You must include a physical address. That's in the very bottom footer, and you must give them at least some type of way of unsubscribing, either reply to me and write the word unsubscribe, or you put the unsubscribe link miles down on the page, and that's what I do. So I just hit enter like 20 times, and so they can't find the unsubscribe link because it's buried. So sneaky, sneaky. So a couple other things that I think are really fun if you're really low budget is essentially Lead Feeder gives you the ability to see who has come to your website. If you know that they're major companies and they're potential customers, you get 7 days of information for free and it's ongoing. So the idea is under every week you can essentially have Upwork people, they're called virtual assistants, for $4 an hour. You basically get an SDR, which is a sales development representative, to make phone calls nonstop to all the people that came to visit your website within the last 7 days. And it fucking works, right? And if you want to do this via email, you can have a virtual assistant answering all the emails using human language, and then essentially when something is really important that needs the boss's attention, they flag it and they put it under a tab in Gmail that basically says, for the boss, right? I have 3 different email addresses over at Valuer. Has anybody gotten an email in here from me, from Valuer? I'm curious. Because if you did, it was from a bot or it was from one of the 30 marketers that work with me. So yeah, the idea is like, I only have so many hours in a day. Why not offload a lot of this to virtual assistants? So some outbound hacks. Again, I realize that, I don't know, it's not necessarily a Nordic thing to be in your face. This is probably more of an American type of behavior, but the idea is that if you're not reaching the same numbers that you used to when you were writing content and getting people to come to you, go to them, right? Why are most of you here? It's either to learn or network, so it's the same thing, you're just doing it online. So one of the most important things that I always explain to my team is you have to get the process right first. Once you show me that you have a real process, then we can just keep churning it out. So the idea is that the process is broken down in terms of outbound outreach. It's target, discover, email validation, and then outreach. Let's go into each of these. So targeting. Targeting is really simple. You can get a $80, it's LinkedIn Recruiter or LinkedIn Navigator. The idea is it allows you to basically search anybody and everybody. You get unlimited profile views, and you can start picking out the job titles that make sense to you, and you can also start picking out the sectors. The idea is that you want to test everything. So I'm only targeting people that have the Chief Product Officer title, and I'm doing it worldwide, and I'm doing people that have that are more than 10 years of experience inside of a company that is 10,000 plus. And I'll get anywhere from 200 to 300 contacts. The idea is using a number of different tools that I'm not going to go into here because they're super shady, but I do teach it in the growth hacking class, so that's a little addendum. Yeah, the idea is I can scrape all those out and get the emails from everybody on LinkedIn. But let's just say we have our target network, right? And I know at least first name, last name, and company. So then I got to find the email addresses, and there are tons of tools for finding email addresses. Some are really good and some aren't so good. So the idea is that these all can be used. Find that lead is okay. That's what we use quite often. I also use BuzzStream. Hunter gives you 100 searches a month. They used to do 20, then it was 50. I think it's at 100. Prospect.io has kind of come onto my radar, and it's not bad. Snove is great for a lot of other things, but not for this. But the idea is that you want to build lists of close to 50 to 100 people. That's a pretty good segment to do testing on. If you were really doing this on like a steroid type thing, I would say buy up a second domain. So the domain that is secondary that I own is valuerai.com. So I basically will get this domain eventually banned or blacklisted, because if you send out too much spam, your domain gets into everybody's spam box and you can never reach anybody again. So why not buy up a second domain for $12 and then have that redirect to your main site, and everybody wins, right? So there's that. Then I want to verify the emails. This is the most important part. This is what keeps you out of the spam folder. So my favorite for a long time has been Never Bounce. Clear Out is the new player on the block. The idea is it tells you whether or not you can actually use this tool, use this email. It works really well, and I honestly think, for the money, I think it's something like 1 cent a contact. Why not? Before you blast a bunch of people, make sure that they're real emails. And then sequenced outreach, right? The idea is that most people don't answer the first email, especially if it's you trying to sell something. But by the time the third email hits you, it's like, fuck, what do you want? And then you're in it, right? So most of the emails that I get back when I do amplification, again, it's when I reach out to 100 people that have written similar articles, the idea is that it's the second article or the second email that tends to get the most responses. And it's fun. You can try a lot of different things. You can try different times. You can try different subject lines. And tracking's in there as well, which is fantastic. And the last little bit is actually focusing on putting this stuff in a place that you can then manage it. And that's what a CRM is for. So there's tons of cheap ones. The most expensive one is Salesforce. It's like $80 for a license, which is fucking absurd. But it's worth it, And the idea is that if you save one deal the entire month, that might end up paying the entire subscription. So make it an effort to get more organized and have everything built out into funnels. So lead comes in all the way through to deal closed. And it's super easy to manage, and you can automate this stuff to enter automatically. We use Pipedrive over at Valuer. It's okay. It integrates with a lot of stuff, so I can see every time an email goes out, every time a person responds, every event that goes in there, and I can basically have it automatically move through the funnel. It's great, and it keeps you organized. So the idea is that if you're running a platform, like a SaaS solution, you have to have a way to be able to reach people that are on the platform. Mixpanel is still my favorite for actually measuring interactions on the platform. This tells you when people get frustrated and leave. This tells you what the most common funnels are when people log in. It's baller, right? And this tells you so many insights that you're not going to get from user interviews. This shit's real, right? There's a bunch of other ones that have kind of popped up. Intercom for the longest time was the standard. They offer startup pricing, which is like 50 bucks a month, and then you go beyond 50 users, and they're like, oh yeah, it's now $400 a month. And it's like, thanks guys, that was just long enough to get me actually using the platform integrated, and now I can't afford it. Drift is actually not bad either. So templates are really cool, and I really encourage you to Google search like sales email templates. There's so much good stuff out there, yet people try to just rewrite their own and their shit. One of my favorite ones comes from Lemlist. So Lemlist uses merge fields automatically inside of their emails, so you can basically build out GIFs that talk to you essentially. So go for coffee, insert first name. Go for coffee, Taylor. Go for coffee, Bea. The idea is like people are like, oh, they're talking about me. So we put out one for architecture quote, which was me doing this on a whiteboard, and it said their company name, and then because you're awesome, because we know so much about you, and because you're in Denmark and so are we. And people are like, oh man, you guys like took the time to like take a picture of you in front of the whiteboard. It's like, no, dickhead, it's a fucking automated thing. Like, you can do this too. You know, like, I appreciate it, but you know, the thing is, those get so much more conversions overall, and we all can do that. Lemlist, there's a free 14-day trial, and the pricing isn't that expensive. I think it's like 39 bucks a month. Try it out. One of the emails that I get way too often is this Hippo one. It's like 2 or 3 times, probably once every 3 months. But it's basically like, hey, I noticed you haven't responded to any of our emails. Maybe it's because, number 1, you're too busy. Number 2, you're not interested. Number 3, you're being chased by a hippo and you need somebody to call for help. And it's like, you know, like the first time you hear it, it's like, oh, that's clever. And then like the 10th time, you're like, yeah, have you no shame? Like there's a million other templates out there. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing a quick thing on my speech over at Tech Barbecue. How many people are going to Tech Barbecue, out of curiosity? Yeah, cool. It's one of my favorite events here in Copenhagen. I do think there's value in it. And it's always challenging to kind of figure out how I can get involved, but this year I got a keynote on the second day. But I'm gonna be going over the future of the Chief Marketing Officer, which is kind of, you know, it's my title. So what do all these companies have in common? Does anybody have a guess? All right, what is it?
They're dying.
They're dying. Well, that's partially true. Yeah, they're having difficulty innovating. But the answer is all of these people have fired their chief marketing officer and have no intention of bringing back the chief marketing officer because most of them are full of shit. 70% of Fortune 500 companies have one at the corporate level, but it's basically down by 74% just 10 years ago in 2009. So these are major companies, right? I don't know if people saw the news not long ago. Uber fired 400 marketers last month, right? They still have 1,200 marketers, which is absurd. Like, why do you need that many people? It boggles the mind. And so they got rid of a CMO in favor of somebody that is either chief growth officer, which is kind of like, rah, or you know, it's chief engagement officer, or something in the way of chief, chief digital officer, which is also bullshit. But the idea is that I think there's a really interesting shift that's happening here, and it goes along the lines of what I talk about within corporate innovation. The idea is that if you really do the math on this, it gets a little scary, and I think that's part of my next slide. No, it's on the next one, but that's okay. So the idea is that a lot of these folks stop learning. When you get to a certain level, you feel like you've earned your credit. I mean, I can't imagine. Being the CMO of McDonald's, I mean, that's one of the world's most recognizable brands. What sense does it make for you to learn anything new because you know everything? You've made it to the top. We see this in large organizations all the time, where you have people that don't go out to events, don't relearn things, don't try to engage in new technologies because they're like, I am peaking. I am the head of this department or the director of. I don't need it anymore. And we all get busy, we all do that. But as I've demonstrated here, if you're not catching up with people that are already ahead of you, you're behind by years, you know? And this stuff happens so fast. And the reason is people get too comfortable. I showed my girlfriend this GIF yesterday and she didn't get it. How many people here have seen fucking Zoolander? Is anybody? Thank you. All right, see, people have seen it. So in the movie Zoolander, this is Mugatu, he's a bad guy. but it's a movie about basically models and people that model clothing and clothing designers. So Mugatu basically is really upset because he doesn't understand why this Derek Zoolander guy is getting so much attention for no effort. And he's sitting there claiming, I invented the piano key necktie, I invented it. And his assistant's like, that's right, yes, you did. So it's one of those fucked up things where you have people that are claiming that they're phenoms because they did something so rudimentary and so elementary to us years ago that it's now amazing, right? And that blows my fucking mind. So this is an interview with the CMO of Goldman Sachs, and she was there during 2007 during the housing crisis. She basically said in an interview that we realized we had to do something about our brand, so we created the first company LinkedIn page. Huh? Yeah. And I'm like, what, are you fucking serious? Like every intern right now can do that in less than 5 minutes. It just occurred to you to say that in 2017, how much of a game changer that was. You know, and the thing is, when you're in this echo chamber of you're brilliant, you're great, everything is perfect, you lose sight of reality, right? And that's the scary thing. And no offense to some of the folks that are in, let's say, an older age group, but I want to paint a picture, right? So the idea is that if you're looking at the average age of a CMO in a Fortune 500 company, it's 54 years old. When they graduated from high school, they would assumingly be 18 unless they're fucking brilliant, who knows. But the idea is at the age of 18, that would have made the year 1987. The internet wouldn't have hit market penetration till about 1993 to 95, which means they're spending anywhere from 5 to 8 years without the internet. And now they're in charge of companies trying to speculate how they can grow them digitally. That doesn't make any sense, right? The idea is like, can you imagine some of these young people have grown up wearing diapers with an iPad, right? How the fuck am I supposed to compete with that? And that's what's coming. And I think the reality is there will be a giant shift in some of these large organizations. There's a reason that the best soccer players on the team don't go into the clubhouse and become the commissioner of the league, right? You keep your best soccer players as the star forward. Beckham didn't become the head fucking coach. He stuck around and made a lot of money, obviously, and they paid him really well, but he was talented at the job that he did. And the idea is that maybe not everybody needs to graduate into this, and maybe reward the people that are phenomenal and amazing and, you know, irreplaceable for the jobs that they're doing well. And that's the art and the difference between companies are like, well, fuck it, we'll throw this guy in to be a CMO and I don't know, see if he can do something different. It's like, well, let me tell you about newspapers and magazines. And that's happening. One little case that I want to go over is the Kylie Jenner. Does anybody remember the Pepsi ad? They paid almost $100 million for that. And it's like, yeah, I'm a protester too, but I drink Pepsi. And it's crazy. So the amount of money that was squandered was, it's speculated $100 million. If Pepsi even tried to do some of the growth hacking techniques, if they even tried to do some of the things that make sense in terms of hyper-targeting and the amazing things in terms of different ad segments, they would have won that money back in a matter of weeks. But they don't, because they go after the stuff that they know the most. And that's kind of what my whole speech is about. I'm probably going to offend a lot of people, but I think it'll be fun. You know, and edginess works, right? Sometimes, maybe not. The last little thing, how many people have seen Mad Men? Yeah? See? This is going to turn into a fight when we get home. But the idea is, I imagine back in the days of Madison Fifth Avenue, you know, where this is where all of the phenomenal marketers started. This is where everything happened. This is Mad Men. This is where, you know, like, hey, we got a catchy line, like, loving it. Like, yeah, print it, go for it. The idea is that doesn't exist anymore. And because we have a flat world in terms of, you know, the existential way of thinking of it, everybody can have ideas, everybody can do everything from everywhere. You don't need to be located in New York at the best firm in order to come up with the best ideas. The shit that I care about is execution. And I think I've shown enough stuff here that at any given point, and by the way, you get the slides if you connect with me on LinkedIn and ask for them, but everybody here can at least try to play with these. If nothing else, it's a chance to learn something new, something you didn't know yesterday. And that's why I got into this shit, because it's getting handed a flashlight in a dark room. You know, like there's nothing like it where it's like, I know something that nobody else knows. And it's so exciting, and then it's like, well, what else is there? And the great thing about marketing is it never ends. There's always something new. And that's why, I don't know if you guys can tell, but I get fired up about this, right? Like, some people work on like old cars on the weekends, or you do fucking CrossFit or whatever. Like, I do this, like genuinely this, you know, and this is my jam. But it's not to say that you have to be on this level of passionate, but find an element of it where it's like, cool, I want to combine this and, I don't know, whatever my passion is. I think you'll find that there's a lot of interesting things you can tease out of just these small tools here. And by the way, I didn't even get a chance to go over all of them. I'll show a couple of quick slides real quick that I had to skip over because they were a little out of order. But this is just a feel for the landscape of what's happening within marketing. So this is a view of all the tools that were available to marketers in 2011. Right? It's a lot of tools, a lot of different things, a lot of different areas. Right? Flash forward to 2014, a bit more. Right? 2019, that is, I couldn't even look at that if this were in HD and I had a fucking magnifying glass. Imagine what it's going to be like in 2 more years, right? That's happening right now. And it's exciting because there's no way that you can ever catch up with this, but it means you have unlimited tools to make as many cakes as you want to, right? As many recipes as there are tools. So some of the last little bit I'll go into here. Cool. So again, architecture quote is what I literally spend my nights and weekends doing for the last almost 2 years now, a year and 8 months. It's a passion project. Again, if you know any angel investors that want to fuck up the architecture space, I'm your guy. Think it'd be a ton of fun. Clint Marketing, if you want to understand how this could actually work for your company, my partner there, Rasmus, will be hanging out as well. Valuer.ai is the company that, you know, it's given me the ability to come out in front of you guys, and I really appreciate that from them. It's trying to disrupt these large corporations, which, again, the more layers of the onion that you tear back, it's like, dude, it's time. So some of the large organizations, if anybody's here that wants to talk to me afterwards, I'm happy to do that. And I'm going to be posting a bunch of stuff on taylorryan.io. But again, if you want the slides, connect with me on LinkedIn. There's one other Taylor Ryan in Denmark. So I don't know, I'm that one. But yeah, feel free to connect with me, and I think that's it for me.